Hey everyone, welcome to Inspire 101. My name is DJ, your Honolulu location pastor for InspireChurch. And you know what? Today we're going to do an overview of one of the books of the Bible, in fact, one of the Gospels, and that Gospel is the Gospel of John, one of my favorites. The Gospel of John is different than the other three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, in that it is not a synoptic Gospel, meaning that it's the first three, the synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are similar in their story and their framework and their outline, and John's is different, and he's adding new stories that you don't see in the other Gospels. And probably they believe that it was written after the first three Gospels because he's emphasizing something, he wants to add something. And so they believe that it is written by John the disciple. In the Gospel, he's called John the Elder, or the disciples whom Jesus loved. And so most scholars believe that it is actually John the disciple, the one who was the eyewitness to all the things that Jesus did. And he wrote it probably during the time when he was older in age, and he was serving the church of Ephesus, probably around AD 85 to 95. That's what they believe. And what was his purpose for writing this book? Well, the purpose of writing this book is actually pretty explicit. He actually tells us why he's writing this gospel, and it's in John chapter 20, near the end of the gospel, verse 30. It says this: "The disciples saw Jesus do many other miraculous signs in addition to the ones recorded in this book. But these are written so that you may continue to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him, you will have life by the power of his name." That's right. He's writing this so that you'll continue to believe, or maybe believe for the first time, that Jesus is the Son of God, and that by believing in him, you'll have life by his name. That's the purpose. What a great purpose. So how is this gospel laid out? It's basically, in its most simplest forms, it's basically two halves. And the first half, if we look at the first chapter even, is just the introduction of who Jesus is. John's laying out that the fact that Jesus is the Word become flesh, that he is divine, that he is fully human, but he is also fully God. And so that's really one of the emphasis that John lays out throughout this gospel, that the deity of Christ, and also that he is the Son of God. And then we even see in that first chapter of different people meeting Jesus, the first disciples being called, and the different titles that he's given, that he's called fully human, that he is the Messianic King, that he is the teacher of Israel. And then it even explicitly says that he is going to die for the sins of the world. And that's that first chapter. And then the following chapters in this first half, from chapter 2 to chapter 10, is basically him doing all these miraculous signs and some teachings to show that, yes, he is the Son of God, and that he is truly divine. So that's what we see in that first half. And then we come to the hinge that takes us into the second half. And that hinge actually is the miraculous sign of Jesus raising Lazarus to life. Lazarus was a good friend of Jesus. He ended up dying, and Jesus raises him to life. And why this is such a hinge point is because it's the miracle that caused the religious leaders in Jerusalem to really take notice, and really this is like the last straw, basically, to say, you know what, we got to kill this guy. We need to put an end to him. And they start conspiring to kill him. So basically, it was this sign which really led to Jesus's walk down towards his own death on the cross. And so that leads us into chapter 13, which is the start of the second half of the Gospel of John. And this actually just covers his last few days. It's interesting how the first half of this gospel, right, from chapters 1 through chapters 10, are basically covering Jesus's 3 years of ministry. And then the last half of this gospel is mostly just covering the last 3 days of his life. That's how John laid it out. He wanted to emphasize this last portion of his life. And so this second half, in the beginning from chapters 13 to 17, we have Jesus's final words, his final teachings, his last things that he wants to get off his heart and he wants his disciples to know about. He's defining love. He's defining who he is. He's trying to help them see who he is and who he's called them to be and who he's called Christians and believers to be. And then it leads to his trial, his betrayal, his trial, and then his death on the cross. And then eventually, of course, his resurrection. And then at the very end of the book, we see the restoration, the reinstating of Peter to lead this movement of Christians that would become the church. And then also letting people know that John, he is the disciple who witnessed all these things, and that's why he wrote them in this book. It's interesting also to note how John has used certain patterns that might be interesting as you're reading this gospel to look for. One is that he loves to use the number 7. 7 is in the Bible a symbol or representation of completeness. And so we see Jesus make the claim of I am, right? I am kind of links us back to Moses when he's in the wilderness in Genesis, and he sees the burning bush, and God calls him out, and Moses says, "Who should I say is sending me?" And God says, "Tell them that I am is sending you." And Jesus makes 7 I am statements. He says, "I am the bread of life." He says, "I am the light of the world. I am the gate for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the true vine." 7 I ams to basically say, I am the God who was talking. I was in the bush with the Father, and we are one. And then he also sees that there are 7 signs that are performed in the Gospel of John. 7 signs, starting with him turning water to wine, then healing a sick boy, then healing a paralyzed man, then feeding the 5,000, then healing a blind man, and then raising Lazarus to life, and then culminating ultimately in him rising from the dead, number 7. Because why? Because in reading this gospel, John wants to make sure that you will continue to believe, or maybe for the first time believe, that Jesus is the Son of God, and but by believing in him, you will have life by his name. And that's the Gospel of John.